Yesterday, we saw the first round of the NFL draft, so I just wanted to come on here and determine who I thought were the winning teams of this draft and who I thought lost the draft, at least the first round of it. And we're going to jump right into it, and we're going to start with the team that I think absolutely won the first round of the draft, and that, of all teams, is surprisingly the Dallas Cowboys. You might think that's biased looking at my hat, but I am actually not a Dallas Cowboy fan. I'm from Texas, but I've never been a Dallas Cowboy fan. I am actually a Minnesota Viking fan, which we'll get to in a bit. But this Dallas Cowboys team, I think, absolutely nailed it. First, with their first pick in the first round, they took Caleb Downs, 11th overall safety out of Ohio State. And then with the 23rd pick, they would draft edge rusher Malachi Lawrence from UCF. We'll start with Caleb Downs. He was my favorite defensive player in this entire draft. Over David Bailey, who went second overall, over Arvell Reese, who I had pretty close to Caleb Downs, but just underneath. Caleb, he has fluid hips. He is a ball hawk. He has insane closing speed. He just has the IQ needed to play the position. Everything about Caleb Downs is a guy that is a game wrecker. He is going to go into Dallas and I think upgrade this defense at least a tier by himself, as well as the moves they made this offseason. You add in the edge rusher Malachi Lawrence that they took 23rd. In a vacuum, this was perfect. They had one of the worst defenses in the league last season, and you add two big-time playmakers in the first round. This is something I love. There's no secret either that Dallas loved Malachi Lawrence. And what I love about it is that they were able to trade back and still get their guy. They knew that they were going to take Lawrence. The league knew they were going to get Lawrence. It didn't matter. They were still able to make a trade with Philly, and we'll get into that too because that's partially why I think they had the best draft yesterday. So with the Caleb Downs pick, they had to trade up one pick. Apparently, they thought Miami or somebody else was going to take Caleb Downs, so they actually trade up one pick. They swap first rounds with Miami, and they also give them 2 fifth-round picks. And I was left scratching my head. I was like, man, I don't really know if that was necessary. Maybe it was, and as much as I love the player Caleb Downs, I'm not against it, but it was something that I was scratching my head about. Like, man, I don't know if you really had to do that. Well, you get to the 20th pick overall, which is their second pick that they had, and they ended up taking that pick, trading back with Philly of all teams, and they made Philly give them 2 fourth-round picks just to move back a couple of spots. Masterclass by Jerry, probably by Steven, if we had to be honest, but I'm going to give Jerry the credit here. That's just perfection. That is perfectly executed. You get your guy in Caleb Downs, and then you trade back and get your guy in Malachi Lawrence. I think both of them are, again, going to come in here day one and elevate this Cowboys defense a couple of tiers. This defense, like I said, was one of the worst in the league. I think they could actually end up being average to above average with all of the moves that they have made with that explosive offense. That is a huge deal. That is a playoff team, I think. It's obviously very early. We're still in April, but right here, right now, I would 100% say that the Dallas Cowboys are making the playoffs next season. Who knows? Long ways away. We got till August before I have to make official predictions, but right here, right now, I really love what Dallas did this offseason, and with that offense, I mean, the sky's the limit for them. Next, we're going to go into our first losers of the draft, and it's actually the team that the Cowboys traded with the first time, and that is the Miami Dolphins. For starters, I think getting Caden Proctor Jr. at 12th overall is a little bit of a reach. I didn't think he is the guy they should have went. I'm fine with them going a line. They want to build their front units. It's part of the identity that they're trying to build here in Miami, and that's totally cool. But I just don't think Proctor was the right guy. I see it from the standpoint of he has super high upside. And so you want to get the guy that has super high upside when you're a team that's tanking, because let's make no mistake about it, this is a team that's tanking this year, which is very rare in the NFL, but that is what's happening. Maybe they're thinking, if we're tanking anyway, we don't care if we're good, let's try to get a guy that we think could become the next all-star tackle in the league if he can figure it out. There's a question if he's even going to be a tackle. He might end up having to play guard. It really doesn't matter for this argument. The point is, he has been so up and so down. There are so many other offensive linemen specifically that I thought they could get. There's so many other players, maybe like a Ruben Bain, which we'll get to in a second. I just don't understand this from Miami. I understand, I guess, building a culture, but I really scratched my head on this pick. I didn't think it was necessary. Again, he has the flashes, but he also has the lowlights that come along with it. If it works out, me and everyone else is going to look stupid because I think it's a pretty universal opinion that this was not a good pick. But if he doesn't work out, then Miami's just going to be that much further setback, missing on another first-round pick while they're tanking and really can't afford to be doing stuff like that. They had another first-round pick. They took cornerback Chris Johnson from San Diego State. I do like Chris Johnson. I do worry about him being your number one corner, which I think is what he's going to be here in Miami. I worry even for his development, not just like how it's going to look on the field because they're tanking, so that doesn't really matter year one. I worry about his development as a player, being the number one corner on an NFL team in year one. He is going to have the hardest assignments. I really don't like that for him. I don't know if he's ready for that. I think he has all the potential in the world. I think he's very smart in off-man coverage and zone coverage. But having to be the guy in Miami as far as the corners go, I think that's what he's going to have to be, and I don't love that fit. So 2 picks here that I think are going to struggle heavily year one, and that can stump players' developments, especially if the coaching staff isn't good, which who am I to say, right? We haven't even seen this coaching staff go to work yet. So who am I to say if they're not good? I have my doubts. And these are 2 guys that I think are going to need real development. They have the upside to be great, but they need real development, and I just don't love it here in Miami specifically. On to our next winner. We're going to go with something that's very, very simple. A guy fell to them, they took them, they win. That is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Ruben Bain Jr. somehow falls all the way to pick 15. Tampa picks him while they needed an edge rusher. I mean, it doesn't get much better than that. Ruben Bain is a guy that I thought was going to go top 10. I thought he could even go top 5, but I thought for sure he was going to go top 10, and he fell all the way to pick 15. It got to a point where I forgot he was available. After pick after pick after pick, he wasn't getting taken. I completely forgot he was available. And then I saw him pop up when Tampa picked. I was like, what is he even doing here still? He's a guy, he has shorter arms, and that's going to be the biggest complaint. And I almost wonder, because of last season, if the narrative around short arms, specifically last season into the Super Bowl with New England, if that's why he fell. It's not like we haven't seen people like that fall before. It just really feels like with all of the other things he's good at, that narrative really hindered him and made him fall in this draft specifically. At least a 15. I understand if you're taking Arvell Reese or David Bailey over him, but man, I just can't imagine him falling all the way to here. Something that really makes him great is his power and his strength. He is able to bull rush the opposing tackle across from him. He is able to set the edge with that power as well. Shorter arms, I think that's a lot of people's worry in the NFL too, is he's not going to be able to set the edge, but he has so much power to make up for the lack of arm size that I don't think that's going to be an issue for him. I truly think Ruben Bain is going to come in here and eventually become at least top 10 edge rusher in all of football. And so for him to fall all the way to 15 is kind of mind-boggling to me. I get there's issues, but there's issues with David Bailey as well and his bendability. And is he going to be able to do to NFL athletes what he did to Big 12 athletes? And the answer is no. And so while I understand David Bailey maybe is a safer pick, I don't understand why we're overlooking his flaws and we're not able to overlook Ruben Bain Jr.'s flaws. That said, Tampa did overlook those flaws. They took them, and I think they absolutely made out with a steal because of it. Next, and the last losers that we're going to get in depth with is the Cleveland Browns. I really didn't love their draft. They traded back with Kansas City. They got okay compensation for it. And they go back to pick number 9, and they take Spencer Fano from Utah. He wasn't my number 1 offensive lineman. He was the first offensive lineman taken off the board. He was my number 2 offensive lineman on my board personally. So I already don't love it from that standpoint. Is they didn't even get the guy that I thought was the better fit here. With that said, he is more versatile, I think, than Maui Noah. And so Maui Noah might end up playing a guard anyway, but I think Spencer Fano fits a guard, an oversized guard, or a tackle, either one. And so Cleveland did need an offensive lineman. They already have some pieces. You don't quite know where they're going to play, like Titus Howard. So it does make sense to go with the guy that's more versatile. With that said, it's not like I'm anti this pick either. Like, I don't want it to come off as this was a horrible pick. I'm just not. This wasn't my first option. This was my second option. So they went with my second option first. So I'm a little down on it. It's not that big of a deal. Where I think they really lost it is that added in with the fact that their number 24th overall pick, they go with KC Conception, wide receiver out of Texas A&M. I think he's pretty gimmicky. I don't love him to be your star wideout, and if you're taking him in the first round, I think at least that's what you're going for here. He's at his peak. I think he's Zay Flowers, and you could make the argument, well, Todd Monken was the OC in Baltimore. He made Zay Flowers work, and I would argue he didn't really make Zay Flowers work. Maybe he got the most out of Zay Flowers, and maybe he can get the most out of KC Conception, but I don't know if Zay Flowers 100% is a premier wide receiver in this league. And I get it from the standpoint that Cleveland needed a wide receiver, and they went out and got one. I don't know. They need a lot of things, too. So I almost wonder if I would have went an extra lineman, or I guess maybe we can get into this a little bit later. I don't love the play style of receivers who play like Debo. And Omar Cooper Jr. is a guy that kind of plays like a Debo Samuel. And so I will be open and honest about that first. I don't love that play style. I like receivers that can separate, but I also think they have a place on teams. And so I probably would have rathered Omar Cooper Jr. here in Cleveland in this specific spot. KC Conception is a guy who is a big-time playmaker. He has a lot of quickness to his game, but it feels gimmicky. It feels like like Zay Flowers, everything's going to be at the line of scrimmage or deep down the field. I think if he has an Xavier Worthy type play, then this is a big-time win for Cleveland. And I think Xavier Worthy has been kind of disappointing as a first-round pick wide receiver. And it's kind of the same thing to me, KC Conception. It is just disappointing, in my opinion. He's going to be not a bust, but just disappointing as a first-round wide receiver, similar to, like I said, Zay Flowers or an Xavier Worthy. There's a world where he I really don't. I think Zay Flowers is a ceiling, man. That's why I have this so low, is I like Zay Flowers. I don't love him. And that's why I feel about KC Conception. I don't love him. I don't even necessarily like him right now. It's just maybe he can get up to the Zay, and then what? I don't see the growth past that. So that is why I say Cleveland lost this draft, or the first round, I should say, because they didn't take the number one O-lineman, in my opinion, and then they took a receiver that I think has a ceiling on him that isn't the highest. Whereas at least like with Omar Cooper Jr., the ceiling for him, in my eyes, I see like he could be a Rashee Rice. Where KC Conception, I don't know. I'm just not sold. We'll hit up some honorable mentions real quick before ending this video, starting with the Philadelphia Eagles. They end up getting Makai Lemon out of USC. This, to me, means that A.J. Brown is absolutely 100% gone. Within the next couple of months, A.J. Brown will be traded, and this is such a win for Philadelphia. If this is happening, you were probably always going to trade A.J. Brown, and now you're getting a guy that can come in and pretty much on day one, I don't want to say replace, but add so much production where it could have been missing with A.J. Brown being gone. If you don't really know about Makai Lemon, think of a Amon-Ra St. Brown, Puka Nacua type receiver. I'm not saying he's going to be as good as them, but that style of receiver, that is who Makai Lemon is. So you're kind of adding a safety blanket to Jalen Hurts, who I think really needed a receiver like this. You still have Smitty on the outside. Now you're going to have Makai Lemon. I think he's going to fit this team very well, and it's just a huge win for Philly. They did have to give up the 2 fourth-round picks to move up. Again, I think that's masterclass stuff by Dallas. But Philly, I think they did a very good job. Next, we have the Minnesota Vikings. That I have them listed as losers. Like I said, this is my team. But with the 18th overall pick, they made the pick of defensive tackle Caleb Banks out of Florida. he is a dog. He's a monster. The big thing with him is he has a pretty legitimate foot injury. There's a lot of talk about big men don't really recover from foot injuries. And here he is with a foot injury going first round. The team really needs a defensive tackle, so I don't want to sit here and act like they didn't draft a need. They definitely did that, and they got probably, if healthy, the best defensive tackle available. You can make the argument if he was healthy, he'd go closer to top 10. The issue is he isn't healthy, and he's not healthy currently. They're hoping to get him back by the regular season. That's what I saw. That's a huge red flag. You don't love drafting players that are already injured. Clearly, they had his medical. Clearly, they felt comfortable taking him anyway. And if he works out, then they won't be losers by any means. It's just a really big risk, in my opinion. When you had other needs, too, you could have got the safety out of Oregon, Thieneman, and he would have been a great fit to this team as well. It almost makes me wonder if Harrison Smith is coming back for another season. Otherwise, why aren't you getting a safety? That is a safer, better option, in my opinion. So it's a loss because it's such a big risk going in the first round. I just don't know if that was a risk worth taking for Minnesota, yet they did it anyway. On to our final winner. Again, these are just honorable mentions. I'm trying to go through them pretty quickly. We have the Tennessee Titans, 4th overall, taking Carnell Tate. A lot of people aren't happy with this pick. They keep doing the Joe Burrow meme with the offensive lineman getting bull rushed and the pass going incomplete. I'm not. Cam Ward is a dog. I'm one of the biggest Cam Ward supporters probably ever. I'm not a Tennessee Titan fan whatsoever. I just really like Cam Ward. When you watch the games and you put on the tape, he makes a few plays a game where you're like, whoa, that's impressive. That's insane. That's crazy. Very Mahomes-like in some of, not to be Chris Collinsworth, but in some of his tape, it's very Mahomes-like. The moves he's making, early Mahomes even. So to give him a legitimate wide receiver 1 is so huge, in my opinion. You now give this dude, Brian Daboll, as an offensive coordinator, and we saw what he did with Josh Allen. You give him a legitimate wide receiver 1 in Carnell Tate. You have Calvin Ridley still, while Wan'Dale Robinson is now here. I really like this receiving unit around Cam Ward, and it is easier for us to sit here and see exactly what Tennessee has in the quarterback now that you have real weapons for him. He's still going to be running for his life. But to me, I don't really care. I want the playmaker. And you can fix the offensive line as you go. All you're looking for is a step forward for the Tennessee Titans. They don't have to go make the playoffs this year. You want to see them win around 7 to 8 games. I think this will help them do that while helping the development of Cam Ward. I think this is a great pick. I really loved it from Tennessee. And finally, the last losers I have in this draft is the New York Jets. 2nd overall, they took David Bailey, edge rusher out of Texas Tech, and I predicted that they'd do that because it was safe and that felt like a New York Jets play. Well, it's exactly what happened. I think Arvell Reese was pretty obviously, at least in my opinion, the better prospect and the pick that should have been made here. Not that I think David Bailey's bad. I just think, like I talked about with Casey Conception, I think he has a pretty significant glass ceiling that he's not really going to bust through. I view him as a dude that is going to come in day one and actually have a really good rookie season. I think we could see him do like a James Pierce last year. The issue is I don't see him getting much better. I don't see him taking that step forward. I think he'll be a solid to good pass rusher. The rushing game, will he set the edges? That's iffy. That's really iffy. And then is he going to be able to get used to the speed in the NFL? I don't know. So David Bailey, I think, is fine, but there were other options that were better and available. I think Arvell Reese, like I said, was the better pick. You could even make the argument, in my opinion, that Ruben Bain would have been a better option here as well. That's just my opinion. Then they went Kenyon Sadiq, who I think is a very raw prospect, and he can be very good. Early on, I think he'll be very inconsistent. It's just this Jets offense. Who you don't want to see good players go to this Jets offense. And that's not to bash on the Jets, and that's not to say why this is a bad pick. That's just kind of my own thing. Kenyon Sadiq, I think, very impressive. I don't sure if he was worth the 16th overall pick, but very impressive athlete nonetheless. Again, very raw. If the Jets are able to develop him, this could be a great pick. But I just don't have any confidence that the Jets are going to be able to develop a guy like Kenyon Sadiq. And that kind of is true for their next pick. They had 3 first-round picks after trading up with the Niners, I think it was, or Bills maybe, one of them. Anyway, for the 30th pick overall, they got Omar Cooper Jr. out of Indiana, which I talked about, and I did say I could see his ceiling being all the way up to Rashee Rice. Can you see the Jets getting that man's ceiling all the way up to a Rashee Rice? Probably not, especially with Garrett Wilson as the number 1 wide receiver there already. I think it's much more realistic that we see him more around like a Deebo Samuel, and I already said I'm not the biggest Deebo Samuel guy, so seeing him here of all teams, I think there were teams that if Omar Cooper Jr. gets drafted to, I'm like, oh, he can work there. The Jets aren't one of them. So them taking him and Kenyon Sadiq, guys, I'm just like, I don't think you can handle them. And I'm not the highest on them as prospects, even if it weren't to the Jets. So I'm not that high on them, and they went to a team that I don't think is going to be able to progress them the way they should. And then I think they missed on the 2nd pick overall. Kind of a mess from the New York Jets. But again, the reason I put them in the honorable mentions category rather than actually in my top 4 is because I still think they're all 3 good players. I'm just not the highest on any of them. I just think they're all like solid prospects, and that's kind of sucks when you have 3 first-round picks, one of them being the 2nd overall, and you just walk away with 3 solid prospects. That is why, for me, the Jets are the losers, are some losers in the first round. So that's all I got. Those are the teams that I view as the winners and the losers of the first round of the NFL draft. As always, if you like the video, make sure to drop a like, subscribe, all the YouTube things. I have other channels, Zealous Fantasy if you want to look at some fantasy football videos, Zealous Wrestling if you're interested in WWE. Other than that, that's all I got.